Thank you, Arnold, and Gigi and Sophia, the rest of the team who have helped us pull this together. And special welcome to Matt Sorum, a dear friend, GBBC ambassador for music and arts, and of course, rock and roll Hall of Famer, former drummer of Guns N' Roses, and for those who may not know, tech entrepreneur. And so we're going to be talking about a lot of different topics today. Welcome, Matt.
Hello, Sandra. Where are you, New York?
I am in New York, and you are on the West Coast. Is that right?
Yeah, it's beautiful today. How's the weather?
It's hot here. All I can say is it's hot.
Yes.
But you're looking pretty cool there with the guitars. We're going to cover a lot of different topics. I think obviously people know you as an incredibly talented musician, but we're going to add another dimension to that because you've got a lot going on and you're doing amazing things for the music and generally the artist community. And so we'd love for you to talk about what you've been up to. But let's start off because we could easily spend an hour on your music career, but let's just do a quick recap of sort of how did you get into the music industry? When did you fall in love with drums? Like, tell us.
Well, not to give away my age, but I saw a little band called the Beatles on the Ed Sullivan Show. That was it. I pointed to the TV and I said to my mom, I want to be the drummer. And that, she thought I would pick Paul, but I picked Ringo. So anyway, long story short, as soon as I got out of high school, I headed up to Hollywood from Orange County. I grew up in a little town, Mission Viejo, California, a suburban town. Came to Hollywood in the late 70s. Pretty much did the couch tour before I did the rock tour, slept on couches, ate top ramen. Got my first big band in the late 80s, a band called The Cult out of England. Long story short, did a couple-year tour with them and then was discovered by Slash and Duff from Guns N' Roses, joined Guns N' Roses in 1990, and then it was off and running. We were playing stadiums all over the world. I recorded three records with that band, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, Spaghetti Incident. Last check, they were about 65 million records sold. Ended up, after that, band split up in 97. I formed another band called Velvet Revolver.
That's right.
Got my first Grammy with that band, was nominated 3 Grammys, and had a good run with them. And then sort of out of all the music stuff, I really got into being an entrepreneur. I've been working on a lot of projects out of Brazil, actually, because my band Guns N' Roses was massive in Brazil. We would do 2 nights at a stadium called Maracanã Stadium, which was the largest soccer stadium in Rio de Janeiro.
Uh-huh.
About 150,000 people would cram into that stadium, and which is crazy to think about nowadays. But we did 2 nights sold out there. So long story short, to this day, when I go to Brazil, I'm very I feel like Ringo and the Beatles. It's kind of crazy. So I started working on albums down there with my partner Pablo Martin, and did a lot of records in Brazil, and then that morphed into an entrepreneurial tech company, and I stayed on as sort of a consultant, and that's how I met you. We ended up at UCLA, and
that's right. You were on a panel. I couldn't believe it.
It all sort of worked from the music into entrepreneurship, if you will. So that's basically the long story made shorter.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. And I'm sure the audience will have lots of questions. And for the audience, if you do have questions, you can choose to either raise your hand and we'll do audio, or you could also tap it into the Q&A box. But I have a list of questions that I want to talk to Matt about, so we'll do that first. The tech scene. So you've spent, as you say, increasingly taking your experience as a musician, and some of the problems of being a musician, struggling musician, then successful musician. Obviously what some of the great things and bad things are with the music industry. Can you talk a little bit about some of the problems that you see in the music industry, and then maybe where not just blockchain, but other technologies could help remove some of those frictions or create a better, more equitable path for the musicians out there?
Well, yeah, I mean, when I was in the business and really successful, I mean, I'm still in the business, but we were making physical product, records, if you will, the old style of vinyl, and then obviously cassettes, which is crazy to think about, and then we got into CDs, and that's how records sold. And then along came Napster, and they created this digital platform to be able to, Sean Parker, and he went around and offered that to record labels and said, hey, you can digitize your music and sell this music over the internet. Well, all the major labels kind of naysayed it, and they were like, well, why do we need that? Well, we have physical product, we don't need to digitize the music. And and then we all know Steve Jobs created a little thing called iTunes, and there was the iPod, and next thing you know, we never had digital paragraphs in our contracts that said this music was going to be digitized. So all of a sudden, he put a price mark of 99 cents per song, and now iTunes was a reality. And then when we started downloading, and physical product, it became less of a thing. And so all the business moved into downloads, which actually was the beginning of the end for the music business in a record sales form. And then sales of records went down dramatically because people started buying singles versus albums.
Right.
A lot of bands went back and fought that and said, look, we're not going to put our music on iTunes. The Beatles was not one of them, AC/DC, Metallica, and then became a reality. So, and then next to that was the new streaming services of Spotify and, Apple Music. And then what happened was artists got incremental versions, almost like being played on the radio. People don't understand that, we get performance rights for radio play through companies like ASCAP and performance right companies, BMI. So they sort of did the numbers based on per play. Okay. And now artists started making less and less and less and less. And you've read articles where we've gone to, and lobbied this payment system because, there's this overhead and all this money is being sort of, who knows, goes into a void, but we don't get it. So, for instance, on about 500,000 plays, an artist can make about $4,000. Well, on 500,000 downloads in the old days, that was 500 grand gross. Now, that particular system really needs to be itemized in through what I would consider a blockchain and be able to see the data. Mm-hmm. And you can help explain this to the audience that doesn't understand blockchain as much, but that data, if it was decentralized, everyone could see it and be able to sort of keep eyes on each other. Like when you even write into an ASCAP system or BMI, all the songwriters and all the people that are involved in that particular song, one person can go in there and change information. Now on a blockchain, that wouldn't be possible because we'd be all decentralized, meaning we can all see the data, and we would be, there would be a signal that would say someone's trying to change this data and things like that. But the best part about blockchain, and the thing I like the most, is I would like my vision is to have real-time payments. And I think that's the future of blockchain when we talk about tokenized economy and cryptocurrency. I would love to be able to wake up in the morning and open my wallet, my digital wallet.
Yes.
And see that I've sold such and such amount of songs and get paid in real time.
Yeah.
And that's the future. In all aspects of life, I think you do the work, you get paid. Just like when someone says, hey, I finished a job, but I want to get paid in cash. And you go, oh, cash, wow, okay. I'm going to give you $100. Well, you bought my song, I get paid. It goes through a system of blockchain, which all the data is put in the node, and everyone gets incremental payments based on the data. Now that's possible. And that's when I started getting really involved in trying to find solutions for blockchain for artists and music.
You raise a number of different problems. There are lots of different problems, but you raise a couple key critical problems with what's happened with technology then coming in and disrupting the music industry. I think most people don't realize how much the artist has actually gotten hurt by not being paid in a way that allows for, proper recognition, frankly, of the value of what the artist is creating. And I think when you look at a lot of the blockchain solutions out there, specifically focused on the music industry, one, as you say, it is around transparency. Two, a lot of them do include who gets paid what and quickly, because also I've also heard that another problem is around royalties. You get royalties, but how do you know when you get paid and from what? Is it very clear? Because I hear it's difficult.
Well, in the music business, most of the time we're quarterly, biannually, right? So the money's sitting somewhere where someone's making, their amount of money on keeping that in the bank or whatever, and then it
Yeah.
goes to an admin system. Traditionally, with publishing, someone's admin on
Yeah.
the catalog. The big companies like we had at UCLA, Universal Music, Warner Chappell.
Right.
So there's an admin guy. They're going through the numbers. They're taking their 10% and they're streaming out checks. Now, traditionally, those checks go out to business managers or someone that's taking care of the books for said group.
Right.
And then they get the money in the statement. It's got a lot of numbers on it and all the countries.
Yeah.
And then they write another check. So it's gone through 2 levels, actually 3. It's gone through all these levels of people and everyone's taking a piece.
Yep.
So down the line, you're getting, and in the music business, there's always someone taking a piece, right?
Sure.
The management, the agent, the publisher, it goes on, the list goes on and on. And so by the time it gets to you, it's gone through all these different systems, and then you finally get paid, and you go, oh, wow, thanks. I just got 15% taken off the top for whatever reason. Now, in the blockchain world, obviously the issue is, and we spoke about this at UCLA, was there's a lot of people that are going to lose their jobs because we actually don't really need them anymore because the data's in the system. And with blockchain, once the data's in the system, it's done. And the publishing catalog can be put there and the money can stream that way. And as we know, we've learned at Davos, the financial movement on the blockchain is real. So that money can be moved without all these middle people grabbing their cuts and doing a bunch of paperwork. And as we know, Gigi, who's on here a little bit later, is about sustainability of, our earth. We don't need paper anymore like that. So it's possible. And I think it will come, just like I say, and I speak about this every year at Davos. When digital music came, we were all naysayers. We're like, oh my God, digital music, Napster, what's that? Oh, you steal the music. Well, then that genius Steve Jobs made it a reality that you pay and you get digitized music. And then Apple and Spotify and everyone else caught on, and here we are. Now, what's the next phase? And that's why we're here having the conversation about blockchain, because blockchain in all facets of life can change so many things, and already is starting to in the financial markets and real estate and, obviously peer-to-peer. When we talk about peer-to-peer and we see what's happened with companies that aren't blockchain related, like Airbnb, like Uber, where you are directly connected. The next is digitized currency and peer-to-peer discussions with any transaction.
So Matt, let's talk a little bit about that in the context of what we're going through right now, which is the pandemic. And you were so kind and generous to work with us on what we called the People Project. We did a survey and went out to those right when all the big job losses were happening. You remember the weeks where millions of jobs were being lost overnight in the US. We got a lot of feedback from musicians and artists and independent gig workers who basically, they were really reeling from what was going on with COVID. How do you, when you think about, one, tell us a little bit about what you're seeing from an artist, musician's perspective during COVID, and then number two, what can be done and how do you see blockchain really helping to kind of move forward? I know you've alluded to a little bit, but let's talk a little bit deeper about that. So COVID first.
Well, okay, a lot of what's happened in my world is now everyone wants me to do a charity Zoom thing. So
of course they do.
for some reason, I believe that most people in the world think that we're musicians and we actually do this just for fun. We don't make a living. We're musicians. And, So it's a funny dilemma that you get into when you actually say, I actually make a living as a musician, right? Now, I'm a guy that's been so fortunate, and I'm so grateful I've had so much success because I'm able to ride this out, this pandemic, right? And be able to create, and then as an artist, have impact. I'm all about impact tech. I'm all about impact as an artist. Now, as far as the artists that are out there that are struggling, are the guys that are starting out or playing clubs. They don't have a regular job. They don't get a weekly salary. They're playing club to club. Back in the days when I started out, I was making $50 a night. I get my check. It'd be like, wow, $50. You know, I would get a gig here and there, $100. So I was working, you know, hand to mouth, hand to mouth, hand to mouth. Same thing with technicians. They get a tour. They work for 3-4 months, then the tour's over. Then they're waiting for the phone to ring. Then they're going to do the next thing. They don't have a regular gig. And even on paper, for the government, there's sort of this independent, if you will. Mm-hmm. Now, I feel for those musicians because I remember what it was like coming up. Now they got no place to go out and go and find a job at, like, even to go find a job at like a, you know, temporarily right now, forget it. So there's no real relief for them. And that's when we started working on the thing with you. And then I've been involved in a thing called Music Cares, where we've got a fund for musicians that, you know, they sign up. And so I've been working on that. And then at the same time, as a musician, I've been online doing a lot of like charity work. And I feel like as an artist, I want to be able to be part of the impact and I want to help. And I have that power. So maybe now is the time for all the artists and the musicians out there to really dive in and say, well, I'm not making a living, but what can I do to help the rest of the world? It's like a pause for us. Create new music and then go out and help. That's it, with your art. Because for me, I've had the success and I've always given back. But now is a really important time. And that's when you come to me and you ask me to help. I'm like, yeah, I'm in. So that's what I've been up to.
No, I really appreciate that, Matt. And you are absolutely so generous with your talent, your music, and also your time. But let's talk a little bit about the artists who's struggling right now and how maybe some of the solutions that we're looking at, especially around tokenization and circular economy, could actually help the artist. Because you've talked directly about the P2P. And I think that's the key point is as we move this tech into more mainstream solutions, artists should be able to get onto platforms and promote their own work and not necessarily have to have all these middle people to have success. The question is, how can someone make a living and actually do all of this, right?
Well, you know, with peer-to-peer and a tokenized economy, it's something I've been working on for a long time, which is my art bid project. You know, it's all about getting through the loopholes of governance, right? So we have to understand, you know, when it comes to cryptocurrency, and when you say the word cryptocurrency, a lot of people don't understand, you know, what that means until you explain, well, let's say token then. Let's call it a token economy.
Right.
So when I've been working on my art bid project, it's obviously a peer-to-peer live application. So the pandemics put that all on hold. But basically, I have a content camera where you go out and you're able to make a living as a content provider, a director of the film, or as an artist, as a player. And then, and people say, well, where does the money come from? And in ArtBit, we use branded content. So a lot of people, and I explain this to people about Facebook and different platforms where they put their content up. I say, well, you put your content up, but you no longer own your IP, right? It's gone. You've just given it to Facebook. The reason Facebook or Instagram, which is the same company, are so valuable is because they've collected content. Well, when it comes to blockchain, it's the first place where you can actually put your stamp of intellectual property on. As soon as you're on your application, This is me. I own this because it's on the blockchain. Now, you're able to go around as a content provider, as an artist, to create tokenization economy based on your performances. There was I think I spoke about this at Davos when Pepsi did a big ad campaign on Facebook. Well, they went to Facebook and Pepsi offered Facebook $40 million for a filter that was a soccer ball with Pepsi on it. And they put up this filter and they allowed the audience to create content based around the soccer ball. Well, Pepsi got all these free commercials from millions and millions of people on Facebook. And I was thinking to myself, oh my God, those people all just worked for free. Why are they doing that?
Yeah.
They're creating content based on, they're told, yeah, use this filter. That's when I said to myself, oh my God, why can't the person that's creating the content, the director,
yep,
be the person that's getting paid? And the only way that can happen is on blockchain, because the data will be retrieved by the brand, the content provider, and the artist. So you could share with each other, and you could, decide who's going to get what based on what you write into what we call the smart contract.
Right.
And on top of that, as we know, we have our friend Gigi coming on. If you don't want to be involved in any companies that do plastics, if you're a vegan, if you have certain beliefs on what you want to work with and who you don't want to work with, all that can be written into a smart contract. When you're on YouTube and they stream commercials across your video, you have to accept McDonald's. You're not allowed to say, I don't want McDonald's. YouTube's already said, if you want to be making money, which isn't much, you have to stream these commercials. In my world, I want a choice. I want to be able to say what I believe in as an artist. I won't get involved with stuff that I don't believe in.
Yep.
And so when we have this conversation, if people are out there listening and they don't quite understand how that all works, it's all based on data. And data in the blockchain is the most secure, decentralized way to have the discussion.
And again, I think, your work with ArtBit, and I believe the URL has been shared in the chat for those who are interested to learn more about ArtBit. Matt has actually started this initiative, and I'll give you a second to explain a bit more about that in detail. But, all of this is really around how do we help turn the current data model upside down? So meaning, instead of you just giving away content for free, how do you as an individual get paid for that? And whether you're an artist or not, doesn't matter. When data becomes value, and let's face it, the time that you spend on social media is valuable. You should be getting paid for that because someone's making money off of what you are doing. I think these are the challenging questions that blockchain technology and technologists are asking. So it's not just the technology, it's actually looking at paradigm shifts and business model shifts. So I'm going to turn it back over to Matt to talk a little bit more about ArtBit and what are some of the solutions for artists that he's looking at. And also, you've got a question here from Mike. What's up, Matt? How do you get up with blockchain as an artist? So tell us a little bit how you got involved, and I would imagine Pablo has a key role in that influence. So handing it over to you.
Well, yeah, I mean, the early days of my blockchain experience was probably the first one was with you, Sandra, down at UCLA when I got invited.
Come on, really?
Well, yeah, I mean, we'd started working on WeDo. Remember the old game that we were working on WeDo, which wasn't blockchain related. It was more of a ways meets impact on the community, if you will. Go out and help people in your community. And
right.
Anyway, that was a long process. And as we know in that startup world, a lot of things go through, a lot of things are a lot of work and don't always make the finish line. So at that point, Pablo and myself morphed into really getting into this blockchain idea. We met you at UCLA.
That's
and
right.
You ended up inviting me to Davos. I had this incredible new experience. And I always say to people, they say, well, you're a rock and roll drummer, man. You're a musician. I said, well, yeah, but I'm looking for new experiences and new challenges. And it's nothing different than being a musician coming to Hollywood as a kid, trying to make it in rock and roll when there's a million other musicians out there trying to do the same thing. And what's your percentage of making it? 1%? And I don't look at it any differently when it comes to the tech world. I have a ton of friends that are big in startups, doing a ton of projects. I see some of them do really well. Some of them don't quite make it, but they get up and they do the next thing. Yeah. And that's exactly the same mentality I have with tech as I did as a drummer coming to Hollywood. It's like, you know, my one band doesn't do anything. I get up and I go and I join another, and I just keep moving. And so that's how I got involved in this. It's been a long process of trials and tribulations and movement, but it's no different. You don't give up. You just keep going because you have a vision. And here I am with all these great people. You know, Sandra believes in me. She's like, she knows there's a finish line, because there will be a finish line, and we will get there when you stay diligent.
I'm right there with you. It's never a straight line. And I think that also speaks to the quality that you have, I think, which is really valuable, which is perseverance, to keep going, especially if you believe in something. You just got to pick yourself up and keep going. So appreciate that. Let's talk a little bit about really how you see the music industry. So let's move up the chain and talk about the music industry. All of these big incumbents are still around. Let's face it, agents are still around. I have friends in the TV industry and the music industry who complain about their agents, whether they add value or not, question mark. How do you see the music industry evolving in the next decade, as we also see continuing business model shifts and pressures on the big incumbents?
Well, unfortunately, I think the music business might be the last one to go. I think a lot of the financial markets will have to shift into blockchain before the artists understand that there's an easier way and an easier solution to do this, right? Particular artists, most artists don't really want to think about the business side of things. Most of us just want to create, right? I'm a drummer. I've had to survive through multiple bands and just survive. So I look at things differently than most artists that I know. Mm-hmm. And for me, it's about what's coming next. And when I go to Davos and I hear the conversation and I see what's happening, I remember when I was at Davos, and I can't remember the lady's name from the World Bank, but they just moved $1 trillion or whatever it was on the blockchain. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, it's happening. And, you know, I meet all these interesting guys like Bill Ty from Bitfury, and the guys from Cardano's, and all these really incredibly genius minds of how they think. And I look at those guys like I used to look at famous rock and roll stars, going, man, I want to follow them. I want to be there when this happens. I want to be there when this breaks out. So I see it and I believe it. So I really believe that the music business is the same as it's always been. The only problem is now it's digitized, so we can't even go to the office to say, hey, there's a bunch of people in there still making the rules, if you will. Even if you want to go on Spotify, you got to know somebody. It's still politics. Now, politics run deep in the streaming world just the same way they did in the physical world. So the artists at some point, with something like hopefully my application when it comes out, ArtBit, will take control. When they understand they can monetize on their own with no other players except for who they decide. Now, I can explain it more when it comes out, but it runs deep. And so I think somebody needs to jump out with an application that really makes people understand where it comes top tier. When Steve Jobs came with iTunes, and all of a sudden, boom, and then everybody else followed. And that's what will happen. Just like when Nirvana came out and music changed overnight. It will happen like that. Someone will crack it, and then the whole world will shift.
So we're not at that tipping point quite yet, but I agree with you. Tipping point is due to come, maybe sooner than later. We'll see.
How many years do you think for the financial markets to shift to blockchain? I mean, they're already doing blockchain movement from China. I've seen it. I have friends that do it. They're moving money in different aspects of ways that they couldn't do through certain governments before. That's
Yeah.
happened, especially in third world countries, which we learned at Davos, where money is so, there's so much corruption. And the only way to secure the corruption is to be on the blockchain. Correct?
You mean to mitigate it? Yeah, absolutely.
Mitigate.
And look,
Yeah.
here's the thing, Matt. I mean, we could talk about this for hours too, which is the battle for the next generation of digital infrastructure. Who's building the digital road, right? If you think about the internet, there's no CEO of the internet, but yet we all use it. And most of us have no clue how it actually functions, right? It just kind of works. It's the plumbing that works. And it's very much also like our mobile phones. How many people understand TCP/IP and the way actually our phones work or the internet works? Very few people actually do. And so I think the battle for who's building next generation digital infrastructure, or the fourth industrial revolution, as people are calling it, that is TBD. I think that battle is happening right now. Timing wise, financial services, different pockets of it are already adopting, before Bitcoin used to be a dirty word, and cryptocurrency as well. Not so much anymore. It's definitely moved over the last decade, and I think that continues. But look, whether musicians will adopt it overnight, you alluded to something I think is absolutely spot on. I'm seeing more adoption. You tell me if you are too, since you spend so much time in Brazil. I see more developing country entrepreneurs, people a lot more comfortable with digital forms of mobile wallets, digital wallets, than I do even in the US. I think actually the US is kind of behind in that behavior.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's happening in developing countries. Yeah, you're right, because the money, is in so many of these countries is so corrupt, and you can't keep an eye on the government. And, so the people want it to move that way, right? Now, when it comes time to what you're seeing happening on the regular, what we call the regular internet or your phone, and you're seeing all this artificial intelligence coming after you, and now they're listening to you with Google Play and all these different things. You're getting inundated with advertisement, right? That's another play on ArtBit. I want to be able to decide what content I want to come into my world. I don't want to be tracked by artificial intelligence. That's just spooky. So I spoke at Brand Week with Bill Ty, talking about why aren't the brands engaging the audience? Why aren't the brands asking the audience to work for them versus tracking them, right? So with ArtBit, you're able to actually work for a brand, and you can make money doing it based on, and I say this about people that put photographs, beautiful photographs up, or they create, content that's really beautiful. I say, you are an artist.
Yeah.
You're a director. You're an artist. You have a vision. Now that's your work. That's your intellectual property. Now, why don't you monetize your intellectual property? I'm not just gonna, So there's ways to do this with blockchain, and that's what fascinates me.
Yeah.
Now, we just have to get to the next point to make it a reality. Like you said, it's just a matter of time. So I'm fascinated by it. I love the impact I love impact tech, and I can explain that a little bit.
Yeah.
So when I got involved with Pablo in Brazil, we started ArtBit. And then we came up with a concept of a thing called viral cure. And that was a way, with blockchain, everyone can be involved in a company. Now, you can explain this about Bitcoin. People think, oh, they don't really know. Oh, I'm going to put some money and I could make some money. They're actually investing in a company, correct? It's like an IPO. It's an ICO.
Well, you're investing in a network, and it has some value.
That has value.
So some people would argue otherwise, but yes.
Right.
We'll leave it at that.
So let's say viral cure. We have an idea that we want to create a cure for tropical diseases. Well, everyone can get into the ICO, basically put their payment in, and buy tokens for a particular concept of a cure. So we came up with a thing called ViroCure, and we've raised tons of money online for antibody testing. We were working on Zika and dengue when the pandemic hit, and we moved straight into COVID-19 and got a lot of supplement money online, raised millions of dollars online actually, and we got some money from the government. But basically, here we were, a struggling new company based on diseases that have had no eyeballs on it. I mean, dengue has over 300 million cases a year, but no one really knows about it or thinks about it. Same thing with Zika. There's many deaths in Zika, but it's a tropical disease. So my point is, really quickly, and I'll move back to music and art, is that the world can be part of the solution when it comes to blockchain. Everyone can put, people say, well, how can I invest? Well, on the blockchain, everybody can invest incremental, right? You can put a little bit in and you own something. And when it builds, you have more value, like a great stock, right? So that's the future of particular companies like ViroCure, and you're part of a solution. So you're not only you're investing, but you're creating impact and you're helping the world. Now with ArtBit, I want to be able to have that particular part of where you're able to give some to charity. You're able to have impact. I'm playing for this. I'm playing for this cause. I'm doing different things and the money's going here. And especially after the pandemic, people understand how important that is even more so. Because we've all been put on pause to think about what's important. Number one, our health. Number two, our family. Number one, family health. They're right there.
Yep.
That's the most important thing. And obviously we have to make a living.
Yep.
So, you know, and this is just open up people's minds to the future. And the information that we're getting on this pandemic is a joke. Why can't people get the right information? Well, because they're being told by different facets of the media what's right and what's wrong. When there should be a system in place like ViroCure that give you the right information. This is what's happening. This is how many people have been, you know, all that. That can be done on a blockchain.
You've got some questions here, Matt, related to ArtBit. Some of it you may not be able to talk about fully because you're not, there are going to be some big announcements coming out. So we don't want to get ahead of ourselves. But a couple questions for you on ArtBit. Is it going to have its own token? And is ArtBit going to support music videos for artists to upload? Do they own their own music? A couple of questions there for you.
I haven't gotten into the aspect of the uploading videos, but I'm sure any content you provide, we can work it out. As far as our own token, yeah, it'd be an ArtBit token. And presently, you know, that particular token will live inside the application, if you will.
Yeah.
So you can use it for different aspects of things. And conceptually, if you work with a brand, you can go back and can buy things and, you know, share that token within that application.
So at the moment, it's a utility inside. It's a utility token inside of the network.
Correct. And then that utility token will have a gamification. You know, you can use it in different aspects. You know, if people come on and charities come on and they have a tokenized wallet, you can build that charity. You can do different things with it, share it. So yeah.
Absolutely. Well, look, I think if anyone's interested in supporting Matt and getting to know ArtBit, go to the website. The URL was put on the chat. And do you have a subscription to the newsletter yet, or ability to sign up on email? If well, check out the ArtBit website, and I'm sure there's a way to register.
Yeah.
And hopefully in the next few months, we're going to hear some really exciting news. So that's great. You've got a couple more questions, Matt. So I'm just going to keep going with these questions. And for the audience, don't be shy. Raise your hand if you want to speak, or just put your question in the chat. It's kind of long, so I'm going to try to paraphrase this. Another huge problem with new artists is promotion, making themselves known. And none of the platforms solves this problem, blockchain or not. You know, it's a major issue. Is ArtBit going to help with marketing and promotion for new artists? How can this be solved?
Well, you know, like new artists, okay, like I said before, with these new streaming services, you're not going to get recognized because you're in a sea of millions and millions of people. Unless you have those contacts to be able to get on these particular playlists,
Right.
which I consider music politics, you're going to struggle. Now, the idea of ArtBit is that you work with brands. Now, in the old days, we didn't want to do commercials for brands. We didn't want to be involved with brands. Then it became another way to make money was doing music for brands, licensing, if you will. Now, I'm looking at the content on ArtBit as a way for artists to create around branding and brand. So this is all about community, and the community is going to be able to share and monetize. And as you go, you're going to be able to tokenize your work, right? So you know, I can't say that it's only going to be recognized if you be able to build your community like any other social network. What's the question you get asked if you go try to find a record deal these days? What's your social media numbers? That's the first thing they ask. And, you know, that's so difficult for a new artist to have to think about that when all they want to do is make great music.
Right.
So I would like to say that my platform will have a better way to gamify the experience and get people engaged as what you create, but you're the creator. Yep. So you have to be creative. Now you have to stand out amongst the rest. Right. So you have to be more creative than the next person, if that makes any sense.
There's actually an add-on to this, which I want you to say yes or no. Is this true? Guns N' Roses took off after they played in the middle of the night on MTV and people started requesting them. Is that how you guys took off, would you say?
Well, you know, in the early days of the band, I wasn't on the Appetite for Destruction album. I came in when that band was huge. You know, I was in another group called The Cult. But Guns N' Roses struggled in the beginning. When they first put out Welcome to the Jungle, it took 10 months for that song to break. And it was only that they kept, like we said before, they kept moving and they didn't give up. In those days, they had label and marketing and all these things, but they got discovered based on this late night performance. And then the song took off finally on the second time that they dropped it. And then obviously their song Sweet Child of Mine came out after that. And then the rest is history. Same thing with any young artist coming online thinking, I'm going to put my song up and they're going to get all this. Well, it's got to be special. If it's not great and it's not special, it's not a great song. So it's not that the thing that changed from when I came up in music to now is there's so much out there. How do I break through? What do I do? It's like I said before, it's like when Nirvana came on MTV and all of a sudden I was like, oh my God, everything's going to change. Because the way the band looked, the way the band sounded, what can you do to change the face of music? That's what needs to happen. You need to come with something original.
You got a couple fans here asking if they will ever get back together, if you will ever get back together. And they love your comment on the importance of perseverance. I don't think it's really a question, it's more of a comment. So that came from Stan. You can choose not to answer that question, whether you guys are ever going to get back together, but clearly you have some diehards, lots of fans around the world. So when we think about where we go next for helping artists, I think you're right. There's actually a couple different levels. You've got the music industry that's going through their own changes. And let's face it, they're probably not the first to embrace the most emerging technologies. They're going to try to keep what they've got. But then you've got also sort of artists that have a lot of influence and power who can drive some of this change. And you very much fall into that category, who can influence and actually bring your knowledge and help technologists understand what are the problems to be solved. And I think that's the cross-section that we need. So can you talk about any more of your musician friends or artist friends who are getting into tech and working with other technologists? Do you see that happening?
Yeah, I do. I mean, I explain to a lot of my friends what I'm doing. They're like, "What?" You know, they're like,
"What?"
But you know, when I do launch, you know, I'm going to be talking to a lot of my friends. I got you know, very like interesting guys. You know, like Lars Ulrich, from Metallica. He's always been a tech guy. He's tech savvy. Lives up in the Bay Area. He's involved in a lot of things. I haven't seen him get into blockchain yet, but I think once we're right there on the cusp, I'm going to have the conversation with guys like that. You know, Brian May from Queen, a very intelligent guy who I talked to. He's an astronomer. I don't know if you knew that about Brian May from Queen.
Whoa,
Yeah,
seriously?
yeah. He's a deep thinker. He's doing virtual performances online. So I can go to guys like that and say, hey, man, here's what we're doing. And I've already talked to Brian about something I'm working on.
Cool.
And so there's a lot of guys out there that are interested in this stuff, but I think they're letting me go out there and figure it out. And then I'm like, okay.
Well,
But
that's great.
I'm gonna bring in my Rolodex of people that I've worked with throughout my career that believe in stuff that I do, and they come work with me with my charity, Adopt the Arts. I do music and art for kids in LA. I make the call, and a lot of these guys come. So I'm going to use the same Rolodex when I get ready to jumpstart ArtBit and my other applications I'm working on. Yeah.
Well, look, I think we've got some brave souls. Love it. Diego, do you want to unmute? And if you choose, unvideo yourself and ask the question you would like to Matt. Diego, we see you, and can you unmute?
Can I unmute him?
Not you. We need Diego to unmute so he can ask his question. Well, while we're waiting for Diego, we also have Alcatel. Well, no, that's actually not someone's name. The person who's listed under Alcatel. Do you want to join in and unmute yourself? And if you'd like to get on video, please do. Ask your question to Matt.
I wonder if Gigi has to unmute them as the host.
I'm going to give it another few seconds to see if we can get that sorted, because these folks had their hands up to ask you a burning question.
Oh, Arnold is controlling the unmuting.
If you guys have ever run a Zoom session, you'll see there's a lot of backstage going on here too. Not quite like a music performance, but you know. Anyway, I think we're gonna have to move on. We seem to be having a problem with the demuting. Diego and the other person listed, Alcatel, do you mind just putting it into the Q&A box? Great. Oh, this is a good one. Martha is asking you, do you see fellow women artists interested in the technology, and have any female artists collaborated with you in any way? Or do you see them coming into the tech space? It doesn't have to be blockchain.
You know, I haven't collaborated with any women on my particular, application. We have women in the Sorum company. We have one of our lawyers is a woman. She's probably the smartest person I know. And we're all involved in this. But as far as musicians, no, not in this particular application. But like I said, I'm going to reach out to all aspects of this great community of artists that I know. And, you know, I have a lot of women that I've worked with, Joan Jett, Cherie Curry, both from the Runaways.
Well, there you go. You've got a long list of people you're going to be able to go reach out to. And I think Martha raises an excellent point. Martha, if you are an artist or technologist, either way, we need to obviously see lots of different faces and talents coming into the space. So Matt, appreciate your bringing in a whole different talented pool of people to potentially help advance this, especially from a music industry point of view. Let's talk a bit about, I'm going to wrap up here, advice that you have, and I know you've shared some, nuggets of wisdom to fellow musicians, but for those who are entrepreneurs and they're really interested, for example, in what you're doing, what is the best way to look at potentially collaborating or reaching out? Do you have like a email, or should they just go through the website, artbit.com?
Yeah, or the Sorum company, if you want to check out Sorum, it's STHORM.io. We've got some really interesting things going on with Sorum, and there's a newsletter there, and the ArtBit newsletter as well.
Yeah,
artbit.com. And yeah, so get to me that way, or I sometimes a good Instagram DM is cool too. I'm on Instagram. I'm doing all my posting, all that stuff. Yeah,
Excellent.
but pretty soon we're going to be posting only on Artbit. That's what we're going to be doing full time.
Awesome. Um, I've got a question here from Amy, who is actually, I know Amy. She's a great, smart lady out of San Francisco at a very large firm, uh, sorry, blockchain-based firm. And she's asking a question around what do you think needs to be changed in the minds of executives at some of these big labels and publishers? What will it take for them to get excited about blockchain? Do you think they need to hit rock bottom and have a sort of Napster situation? Or do you think that they will start adopting and adapting just because they're already under pressure?
Well, I would like to see them, I know there's been a lot of conversations with some of the bigger higher ups at certain publishing companies to bring the infrastructure of blockchain in to alleviate extra workload, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
When you talk about less work, like I said before, people start to worry about their jobs and are they worth anything? And the reality is, with the situation and what's been happening with the pandemic, a lot of guys I know in the music world and the publishing world are still working, and they're all working virtually because that can happen. But I think they're listening to the conversation. There's a few interesting companies like Vest, who's doing distributed shares of publishing that's allowed the public are able to invest in publishing.
Mm-hmm.
So they're understanding it. It just needs somebody to be able to take it and implement it and make them understand that they're not going to lose their jobs. It's just going to be a safer, more effective way to distribute the data and save money. Could save a lot of paper pushing, and that money can go back into the company or whatever. And
Right.
hopefully, and the artists would be nice.
That's right. That's right. I think we're in a pretty exciting place in history right now because we have so many interesting, difficult things, I guess you could argue, happening. And yet there's still all these opportunities because of that and using technology to help democratize, make things maybe more equitable, or at least the opportunity to be more equitable, and perhaps change some of the concentrations of power that sit in music and financial services and so many other places, right? So,
Well, as we're learning from the pandemic, that like I said before, a lot of these big companies and people are working from home, and they're all of a sudden they know, oh, we don't have to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year for this office. For
right.
people, publishing companies and record companies, these guys are sitting in these what I call ivory towers, and in my contract it says that comes off the top, and we get what's called the net. And what gross means, we got to pay all these bills and the lights and the parking and my company car and all this other stuff, and then we get paid. That's the way it works in a gross versus net. Now, we're seeing the reality of the pandemic. Virtual work is a reality, and it's going to be going on for quite some time. And so maybe there's a lot of money being saved there. And then that morphs into a blockchain where everyone, all the players, like right now, you and me could go on my publishing catalog and look in there, automatically see what's going on without having to go into a website, log in my name, do all this extra stuff that's just not effective. It's old school. It's probably one of the oldest formulated businesses in the world that's still working in a sort of a prehistoric way, with the exception of the way they've taken the information and put it into streaming, and now they're paying us these incremental payments of nothing. So we need to take back control, but we need to lead, like you said, with a group of people that understand. And I'm not talking about like Tidal, when they came out with Tidal and all of a sudden you saw Jay-Z and Beyonce and all these elitist musicians going, this is where you should go. It's not about that at all. It's about getting something that's really going to be effective for everyone, that works and it's obvious.
Awesome. And we're actually already coming to the end of our hour, but I'm going to let you have a couple more thoughts around two things. One is the question I want to ask you is behind you, you've got an amazing collection of guitars. I would imagine you've got the most amazing collection of all kinds of musical instruments and equipment. I want to ask, you've heard the concept around digital versions of the very things that you have behind you. And as an artist, whether you could sell these sort of unique digital pieces. What do you think about that as an additional revenue stream for artists? Because they have a brand, if you wanted to create, you know, unique digital versions of something, do you think that could be something that would be appealing to musicians and artists in general?
I think anything future like that is so cool. I mean, we're working on something in Brazil called Teos, which is digital art. Digital art's becoming a reality. I don't know if you saw this, but they saw a piece of digital art on the internet for $1 million. So, you know, there's so much digitized cool stuff. Like I have a really cool 1970s analog board. And of course, I have Pro Tools and an Apple computer and all the things that came after that. And as a musician, we have to morph and learn and bring in new ideas, right? This is the old stuff. This is the cool old vintage stuff. Now, I'm truly believe that all the great original instruments are cool, but I'm always looking towards the future. Yeah. And what can I use to create my new world based around a musician that's been around a long time? So yeah, I'm all about digitizing sounds. You know, I've done sampling libraries of my drum sounds, which are samples that you can buy.
That is so cool.
I did one with Microsoft years ago that's called Drum Core. It's all digitized drum sounds that you can buy the sample CD, and then you can download online and things like that. So yeah, I'm all about that kind of stuff.
Where can someone find that? All of your digitized drum sounds.
I did another library for Spitfire. So go on Spitfire.com. I got all my digitized. Cool. I spent 3 days digitizing my sounds. And people can upload those into their computer and basically use Matt Sorum drum sounds in their music. And I've gone on, I was watching TV a couple times and I heard some sounds. I'm like, man, that sounds like me. It was on Sunday football highlights or something. And it was my drum stuff. But I licensed it out. So basically it's not me playing, it's samples. Mm-hmm. If that makes sense to you. So I sampled, a lot of musicians have done it. There's a lot of different things from Roland Company, a lot of digitized pedals, all really cool. So yeah, a lot of guys don't want to do it. They think it's taken away from their personal thing. But look, it's a modern world, and you know anything's possible. So
well, in today's world, we're also that will help diversify revenue streams as an artist. It may be something that artists need to think about whether. But then again, every artist has their own sort of joie de vivre, so they've got to keep with that. Final words, Matt. Sum up for us, a message to those who may be struggling right now and just maybe not feeling very hopeful. And by the way, you're getting hugs and lots of love from various fans in your chat. So I'm not going to mention all of that, but there was one big hug that came from Diego. But tell us, share some final thoughts for those who may be, artists or not, going through a tough time. And you mentioned perseverance. What else? How do you get through those tough times?
Well, like I said, for me, I'm lucky. I've got music, I've got my family, right? So anybody that's out there is a musician. Take that feeling that you're having right now, that maybe there's fear involved in that. There's like, what's the future hold? I don't know what's going to happen. I'm in financial straits, right? Pour that into your art. What will come out of that art and what comes out of the end of this, and you're going to see when this pandemic finally does end, we're going to get a new wave of creativity. Because if you sit in it and you're just watching the news, don't watch the news. Take this moment in time to create, think about solutions. What am I going to do when this is over with? How am I going to act? Like maybe before this, maybe you didn't act in a certain way and now you're alone to think about those times before. Well, coming out of this, you're going to be a kinder, softer, gentler person. You're going to be more about impact. And we all understand that when this hit, We're all in the same boat. It's the great equalizer. Celebrities aren't special. We're all the same. So, yeah, a guy like me can come on here and go, well, what are we going to do? And people might listen. Or there's other people that are celebrities. And I always say to celebrities and artists that are out there, if you're sitting at home in Beverly Hills in your mansion, I hope you're doing something to help, because now's the time for us to understand that we're all here to help each other, and we know that. So take this time to create. Take this time to find great solutions, and you might come out of it with something more than you never expected before. It's going to be better. It will.
Well, Matt, with that, I have to say, inspirational words. Thank you so much. And thank you for your time. Thank you for what you're contributing, not only what you've contributed to the music industry, what you continue to contribute, but also now you're lending your expertise and passion to the technology space. We look forward to following you. I'm sure the audience looks forward to following you. I want to thank Gigi, it's been mentioned several times, our sponsor, Ocean Elders, as well as Arnold at Medley Media. I want to thank the sponsors for this session. It's a collaboration where we bring together those who really care about how do we build better, equitable society, whether it's technology or arts or the ocean and conservation, doesn't matter. It's about creating a better world and sustainable world that we all want to live in. So thank you with that. We're going to go on midsummer break, but we'll be back in September. So I'm handing it back over to Arnold and Gigi. Thank you, Matt.
Thank you, Sandra.